Hello everyone, you are watching ITV Gold, and joining us today is none other than New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. Today he'll be talking to us about his election rerun and what's happening in New Jersey right now. Governor, thank you so much. So amazing to meet you in person finally.
Yeah, finally. Good to be with you, Didi. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we have to have you because we're so close to election date, which is November 2nd.
Yep.
And I have a lot of questions for you.
Please.
I have to ask you, there's been so much negative campaign that's targeting you and all the work you've done in the last 4 years. Were you necessarily looking for negative campaign like this? How has your team handled this?
I think if you're in politics, particularly in New Jersey, you've got to go into that with your eyes open. So it doesn't bother me. I don't agree with it, but it doesn't bother me. You have to let stuff like that roll off your back. I think we stand overwhelmingly for a positive message, a message of inclusion, diversity, progress. We're both growing the state, making it stronger and making it fairer. And I think that we've got a record that I'm proud to run on. And I think we have painted a path forward if we're fortunate enough to get reelected that people look at and they get excited about.
Yes. Let's get this one question out of the way because I know everyone watching us wants to get an answer to that. That's a criticism that often comes towards Democrats and it's come towards you. High taxes in New Jersey. Could you clarify how are you looking at this entire situation and how would this be helping the middle class of New Jersey, the South Asian American communities of New Jersey in the coming next 4 years?
You bet.
How are you looking at that?
So we inherited, when I became governor, an affordability mess in New Jersey.
Yes.
In every respect, not just property taxes, but the whole question of affordability. As we sit here today, compared to that first day that I took over, and you're a middle-class family, you pay less in income taxes, you pay less for childcare, you pay less for college, you pay less for health care, you don't pay a penny more for NJ Transit. We've not raised the fares in 4 years. Our property tax crisis that we inherited, we've made significant progress. I think our first 4 years are among the lowest increases in the history of the state. I think if you look forward, we're going to see more progress. We want property taxes to go down. We want all those affordability metrics to get even stronger. And the big tax on the middle class was brought to the state by Donald Trump and the Republicans, and that is the cap on the state and local tax deduction. I'm going to fight tooth and nail until we get that lifted, and I'll do that until that day.
Do you think 4 years is enough for it, Governor?
4 years going forward? Listen, I think if we're fortunate enough to get reelected and we put 8 years of progress up against the mess that we inherited, certainly will get us to a far better place. I'm not sure all of our challenges will be solved.
Right.
But listen, there's a lot of good stuff going on right now. I use this phrase a lot and I mean it. It is sunrise in New Jersey for lots of different reasons.
In this case, I have to ask you something which is completely opposite of this. If I was to ask you what is your biggest regret in the last 4 years of being the governor, what would you say?
Listen, I think in the COVID crisis, which has taken over 27,000 lives in New Jersey, it came out, President Trump in an interview with an author said that he knew a lot more about this virus earlier than they let on to the American public. It's not a regret. It's very simply, I wish they told us. We wouldn't have taken different steps, but we would have taken the same steps earlier, and there's no question lives would have been saved. That made me really angry.
Yes, for sure. Now this brings me to vaccine mandates that we have talked about before on the show too. Your opponent is not clear about his take on vaccine mandates. Republicans in general across the country have not been clear on it. How are you tackling that issue with somebody that's completely against vaccine? Are you worried that New Jersey is could be led into a wrong way with vaccine awareness at least?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My opponent sounds like he's running for governor of Texas, not New Jersey. We just today, as we sit here, we just crossed 6 million New Jerseyans fully vaccinated. We are among the most vaccinated states in America. We are the most vaccinated big state in America, and that's something we should be very proud of. As a result, we have the smallest percentage of ICU beds of people with COVID in the entire country. I think his stance on vaccines and masking is extremely irresponsible, and I frankly think it disqualifies him from the position. You got to make decisions, even if they're unpopular. And not all these decisions are popular, I promise you. You've got to make decisions based on science and data and facts. The last thing we need is somebody who puts their finger in the air and tries to see which way the political wind is blowing. You do that, you cost people health and lives.
And you've said repeatedly that you're going to follow science, no matter
100%.
how unpopular some of the measures are.
Sometimes it's been very unpopular, but
Yes.
that goes with the job. That's the responsibility of having this position.
Another very interesting topic, which became your priority and something that you succeeded on, is legalization of marijuana in the state. Why was this such an important part of your administration to legalize it?
Yep.
And following up with that, we still have very high rates of incarceration related to marijuana in the state. What is being done to that?
Yeah, so that's the reason I did it. Social justice, digging out of the carnage of the war on drugs. When I became governor on that first day, I inherited the largest white, non-white gap of persons incarcerated in America. And the overwhelming reason was low-end drug crime. So I committed not only to legalize adult use cannabis, but to not just look forward, but to look backward and to try to be good to our name as America's second chance state, and to undo the damage that's been done to too many young persons, especially young men of color. So we have legalized it. The industry is being put together and formed as we speak. I'm thrilled about the jobs, the revenue, the economy we're building, but I did it for social justice. But we're also looking back. As we sit here, we've had 362,000 expungements of prior drug offenses. That's changing people's lives overnight. And that's what we intended to do, and it's actually happening.
Yes, for sure. And you know, when you are looking at taking the next step in your whole pathway with marijuana, how much is the state going to benefit from it? Because I feel like that's not being discussed enough.
Yeah, it'll benefit in terms of revenue.
Yes.
I think it's probably eventually, when it gets to maturity, several $100 million a year of state revenue. But the overwhelming benefit is the lives that are going to be handed back to young persons in the state, or persons who were young when they made a mistake, and give them a second chance. Obviously, that's a game changer for them.
Definitely.
It's a game changer for all of us. We have a much healthier, more productive, more confident state as a result.
You have also promised to make New Jersey basically the California of Northeast. You want to bring innovation back to New Jersey how it was in the 50s. How far do you think you have gone on that plan, and how much is still left?
We've made a lot of progress, but there's still a distance to travel. So one industry, offshore wind, we're going to be not just the East Coast capital, the American capital of offshore wind, and not just to have the wind energy, but to actually make a lot of the components of that industry in New Jersey. The sports and betting reality is really a fintech business that's taking off. Film, television, digital is a tech business these days. Increasingly, financial services, bio, life sciences companies, tech, telecom are either moving to New Jersey, expanding in New Jersey, or being born in New Jersey. I'll give you one example. I was just at the groundbreaking for something called Sci-Tech City in Jersey City, which is going to be an extraordinary combination of business, startups, education. Best high school, science high school in America is the objective. Lots of entrepreneurs, venture capital. There's a similar project in New Brunswick, not far from here, The Hub, which is going to have more of a life sciences angle to that, where you're getting all in together and you get one of those 1 + 1 = 3 moments. We're making a lot of progress. We still need to make more progress, and we will.
And how do you think this will impact the immigrant community? Because we have some of the highest amount of immigrant community in the country. Even when we're looking at South Asians, there's a huge number of South Asian Americans living in the state.
Yep.
How is that going to benefit?
It's going to hugely benefit. Let me just give a huge shout out to the South Asian community. One of the largest, so here's a kind of a cool thing. We have one of the largest South Asian communities of any American state.
Yes.
We are the most densely populated American state by far. So there may be more South Asians in California, but California is 19.5 times the size geographically than New Jersey. So what does that mean? Our incredible diversity, epitomized by the South Asian community, we live on top of each other. Yes. We have no choice but to get to know each other, to walk in each other's shoes, to understand what our neighbor's religion or culture, or ethnicity is. And I think that contributes mightily to our character, our grit, our attitude as a state. And then within the innovation economy, you've got a disproportionate representation of not just our immigrant community more broadly, but of the South Asian community in specific. So I think that in particular is a game changer for the South Asian community and the immigrant community more broadly.
And it's so amazing to see all these changes come to the state because there's so many of us here. Another big topic that I would like to discuss is, again, women's rights with you. Governor, unfortunately, the governor of the state next to us had issues that came up with women's rights issue. There were allegations against him. Meanwhile, reproductive rights of women are being almost banned in certain states, such as Texas. In this, you come up and you are already saying that you're going to support women's rights. But then how do you sort of, get yourself around these other leaders that are not doing so? And your opponent, do you think, is a part of those leaders?
I can't say in terms of behavior. He's got a very fine reputation as a husband and as a dad, so I've got nothing to say there. But I'm incredibly proud of what we have done and what we stand for. Yeah. So we know that women's health is under assault in places like Texas, Mississippi. We know what the U.S. Supreme Court looks like. It's why I'm as committed as I am to doing a Reproductive Freedom Act to protect women's right to choose. We have the first majority women cabinet in our state's history. We have parameters in place in our administration, in our campaign, and frankly in the state that are the strongest among any American state in terms of workplace conditions, what happens if the awful circumstance of a woman is a survivor, what sort of a safety net does she have to rely on, training that's second to none. So I care passionately about all that. We've made a lot of progress, and I commit we're going to continue to.
Just following up to that real quick, Governor, there are women from states like Texas, Mississippi, who may take the decision of flying to a state like New Jersey to have an abortion if that's what, is needed for them. What do you have to say to those women?
It's awful that they have to do that, but they have every right to do it, and I want to make sure that New Jersey is a leader as it relates to protecting reproductive freedoms. This is a very heavy, grave decision that is not taken by anyone lightly, but it needs to be a decision between a woman and her doctor, and none of the rest of us should interfere or get in between that decision.
Finally, my last question to you, Governor. You have the support of former President Barack Obama. First Lady Jill Biden has also come out in support of you. How important were these endorsements for you in order for you to move forward with Jersey? And what do you have to say about that? Oh,
listen, I'm honored by them. My late mother would say you're known by the company you keep. So when Barack Obama comes in this weekend to help me campaign, that's a big deal. Yes. Jill Biden was here last week. We go way back with both of them. They're friends first and foremost. But I had the great opportunity to work as a U.S. ambassador for President Obama, then Vice President Biden, and got to know them and their spouses well. So it's a big deal. Plus, we've got early voting, which we have to say, right?
Exactly.
Early voting is starting right now, and part of the reason they came in is to shine a light on that. Yes. This is the first time we've ever had in-person early voting in New Jersey, October 23rd to the 31st. It's a huge deal.
Yes, and people can also go in person on election day and they can vote.
Correct.
So that option is available this season for them. And also mail-in ballots are going across. I'm a New Jersey resident. I've already sent in my ballot, so I tell everyone, make sure you vote. One last message on voting, because I think the community needs to hear from you.
Yeah, listen, folks, I don't care who you vote for, although I hope you vote for me, but it is imperatively important that you vote. And again, you just heard the ways to do it. You can mail in your ballot. You can vote in person early, which is the first time that's ever happened in New Jersey, or you can vote on Election Day on November 2nd. I don't care how you do it. I don't care who you go in and vote for, but I do care that you vote. And again, with the South Asian community growing increasingly in strength and numbers, it's really important to have your voices heard.
Yes, so important to have our voices. Thank you so much for your time here on ITV.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.